feeling like I should be moving over there, you know. It's only 7:15 though, isn't it? Still early. But then that one that I see yesterday was perhaps about 8:30, 8:45. Out in front of here. But I remember from last spring, the ones that I saw early on in the year were literally bang on first light. You know, as soon as you light off to see, you might see one or two. Actually, this time of year, you've only got to see one, haven't you? At the end of February now, you know, almost in March, as you can see. Another hard frost last night. High pressure, you know, flat calm conditions. It's not screaming fishing over the bottom and over bait to me. You know, I've got every rod on zigs at the moment. You're not fishing for little feeding windows. You know, it might be a couple of hours in the evening or mornings. You know, you're fishing 24 hours a day with a zig. It's literally an opportunist bite. So all the focus, you know what I mean? You're watching. I'm pretty sure if you can put yourself on them, variation of depths, obviously getting the rods out without too much commotion. Especially on this place, you know, it's tap clear. Under a lot of pressure, it's quite narrow as well, so if you clock them, then someone else clocks them, you know what I mean? Them sort of 4-6 casts in that area, they're soon gone, so trying to stay one step in front of them, like I say, it's all about location. Flipping them little zigs in that area and just keeping your eyes peeled, you know what I mean? As long as you've got up baits on them, every chance of a bite, it doesn't matter how cold it is. Although it's only a couple of swims down, I'm definitely going to move into this area here. I see a couple, they were sort of to the left of where I was, although there's no one down, there's no one actually up this end. Did put a rod on them. I see one a little bit further down to the left this morning, sort of bang in front of here, so it's, you know, it gives me the option I can cover. It puts me in the centre of everything I've seen rather than everything to my left. You know, it's a busy lake as well down here. I'm sure if someone else sort of clocked them, they'd soon be on them, so I want to put myself central, sort of like I say, so they're right in front of me rather than to my left or to my right. At least now I can sort of put one to my left, to my right, sort of, you know, cover that whole sort of area. So yeah, although it's only a couple of swims, I say there's reeds, bushes and so on, and as well people, so yeah, right in front of where they are, or what I've seen, you know. It's definitely 4 now in the last sort of 24 hours in this area. So yeah, we'll get moved and get them out there. Although it looks gin clear, you can see them lines going out, little bits of sediment collecting on them, so I always just make a habit, just pinching the line between my fingers there when you're winding in, you know what I mean? You see some people with wipes and tissue and all sorts, but it just sort of gets the sediment off. It can only but help, can it? Although I haven't done a great deal of time on it, I have fished it a little bit. You know, I know sort of it's 11, 12 foots in front of me here. Although it gets quite a weedy area, you know, and obviously we're not fishing it a lot over the winter. I'm not sure how much that's folded over. I mean, as a rule, it'll still be there, you know what I mean, but folded over, so rather than going, it'd be lovely to present a, you know what I mean, a zig perfectly a few inches over the weed. But without having loads of casts, like so we've seen a couple, I'm going to keep them sort of 6, 7, even maybe 8 foot. They'll definitely be fishing. And as well, you know, the bit of foam above them, I believe it's much more sort of chance of getting seen. So yeah, we're going to stick with a sort of over half depth, if you like, sort of like top sort of layers, just to know that we're 100% fishing. You know, it's no good chucking out them little short ones if not too familiar with the ground out there and bury them in a weed bed, you know. So yeah, I'm pretty sure all these will be fishing. We'll get a gauge, sort of like feeling the lead through the water as well. But yeah, without having too many casts in the area, I'm pretty sure we'll get all these rods out there fishing. definitely feel the weed out there off the drop, but you know, it's well over 3/4 of the way through the water column before you start feeling it. You know, that drop sort of slowing up and then a soft sort of buff. And they're only sort of, you know, 2.5, 3 ounce leads as well. Ideally, you know, I'd like 5, 6 ounces out there, but I say they've seen a couple there, just trying to sneak a couple of rods out, minimum disturbance. Like I say, just stopping just for the water, almost like a little plop. Like I say as well, a regular recast isn't a bad thing on them, although it's gin clear. I'm sure that sediment, you know, free. You're fishing a tight line to them, you know. Free sort of piano wires out there. So only when you get your glasses on and sort of look over the shelf, you realise how apparent they are. So yeah, fresh zigs, fresh recasts, hopefully sneaked in. Gotta be a chance. Another little thing to do is just dip the zigs just before I'm about to cast them. So it just adds that little layer of water on the uplink. Just adds just a little bit of weight to it. You just watch it flying through the air that little bit better. Definitely through the colder months, you know, I'm fishing the zigs. That water clarity clearing right up, the weeds folded right down, you know, you'll be able to fish for them sort of safely. And as well, you know, as we're sort of, them hours of daylight are getting longer, temperatures are picking up, them fish are spending a lot of time in the upper layers. You know, for the amount of drones and stuff that you see people using now and pictures all over social media, you know, it's evident of how much they do spend right up in them upper layers, you know, soaking up them rays. And with that, them zigs, perfect, you know, for sort of trying to pick off a quick bite. You're fishing 24 hours a day with them. You know, all you've got to do, well, in my opinion, is get yourself on, constantly watching, get yourself on a couple of fish, you know, and you've got every chance of a bite. You know, it's this time of year we're in now, late February, early March, you really start watching things sort of come to life. You know, you can sit there and out of nowhere, a group of mallards will start pecking at the surface, followed by, you know, a load of interest by a group of seagulls. That's naturals, you know, coming up through the water column there, hatches going off. And that comes with, like I say, longer daylight hours, the water temperature. But them little key bits of information are absolute gold when you're zig fishing. You know, you might see a little bit of activity in a day. It may just be a few little mallards, next day a few again, but then all of a sudden there'll be a massive interest in that area. You know, you keep your eyes peeled more often than not, you know, that's attracting carp. They're masters of their own environment. You know, any little things like that, they're well tuned in, they know what's happening, what time it is, you know, getting the most without having to risk a hook in the lip, eating our bait. You know, like I say, it's keeping your eyes peeled for them. You don't even have to see a carp jump out. That's what's happening, you know what I mean? We're casting bits of black foam out there or bits of foam suspended in the water. We're trying to imitate, you know, a hatch, a bug coming up through the water column. So keeping your eyes out for that sort of cluster of activity, that's what's going on. Putting yourself in that area, you know, personally I think you're at the best chance of catching a carp. It just goes to show how effective they are. When they're first used on waters where they may not have been so popular. I mean, nowadays, you know, they're a very popular sort of winter-spring method. But, you know, wind the clock back sort of 10, 15 years ago or whatever, you know, when zigs were first sort of used in any amount, lads using them around the pond, devastated lakes, you know, hard lakes as well with renowned sort of reputations have been tricky to catch them from. 70, 80 carp caught in a spring, you know, completely unheard of. Obviously they learn with association, you know, get caught, see the mates get caught. They're nowhere near as do the bites on this sort of pond, you know, as what they did do years ago. But still, you know, you see them hatches going off, put them in them area, you're at as good a chance of bite as any, you know, whether the carp's been caught 10 times on a zig or not, you know, it's naturally feeding on them. Yeah, massive confidence in them. Caught countless carps, unflavoured, piece of black foam out there at night. Full confidence in it, you know, but it's all on a visual. Very much like single up bait fishing. You know, if you're not allowed to use zigs or so on, you need to put yourself on them fish, first and foremost. So yeah, after seeing that little bit of activity this morning, and yesterday sort of evening, everything to my left, decided to bite the bullet, made this sort of move, only 2 or 3 swims down, but like I say, it puts me central sort of to them shows, rather than being off to my left or to my right. You know, every rod sort of covering a bit of ground there where I've seen fish, so only 4 shows, but yeah, more than enough for this time of year. Although it's really cold, you know, definitely confident of a bite, especially if they stay in the area. Only 1 cast of each rod, little leads, you know, can't do any more. So yeah, the rest is up to them. I mean, to avoid any sort of tangles, you know, you're keeping everything minimum. The line straight through to a leg clip, an anti-tangle sleeve, and then the uplink trailing it. You know, there's no tubing, there's no leader, there's nothing behind that. You're watching it all the way through in the air. Like I say, if you're not fishing to a clip, stopping it just before it hits the water, and you're watching it sort of being thrown away, you know. That separation, you know you're 100% fishing. You know, when I'm fishing with the zigs, I'm not just wanting to bring black foam with me. You know, I've got an array of sort of colours, reds, yellows, black, browns. Definitely found, you know, you can be on fish and just not only your depths, but certainly playing around with your colours as well. Certainly get you more bites on a certain day. You know, I've had it where I've had bits of black foam out there, nothing. Wound one in, put a yellow and black out, yellow on the top, black underneath. Get one on the black, one on a red and a black. You know, and the red and the black's been away. Change the yellow one to red, that one's gone. Same with the black, and they've all been on. You know, so definitely playing around with the colours. You know, not just putting them out there and sitting stale behind the rods and thinking they're not having it. You know, I always feel there's always a bite to be had. It's just, like I say, having a little play around and finding what's right on the right day. You know, when you're zig fishing, you literally bare essentials. You need a couple of spools of mono, you know, some hooks, a few bits and bobs. I literally just got a little, you know, little tiny pouch, bare essentials in it. A few different sort of up baits, you know, reds and yellows, blacks and browns. You know, if in a little box, that's literally all you need. You see now it's pretty much, that light's dropping now, pretty much like first light, you know, it's a good time to have eyes on the water. I have seen one sort of yesterday evening, you know, around this sort of time, just about making him out. So yeah, you know, like putting yourself out and just watching as much as you can. I mean, it's you know, ideal, sit there watching 24 hours a day, you know, and listening, but, you know, you get sidetracked doing things, bit of dinner and so on, so, you know, all the attention on watching morning and evenings. And, again, you know, it all boils down to location. If you can see a couple of shows in an area, you know, that information's gold. There's definitely half a chance of a bite this evening, or through the night, you know. Although it was looking really good last night, you know, saw one just on dark, and then again we heard one a couple of hours into darkness, sat here eating a takeaway, a few of us, you know, a couple of us sort of turned, same time, definitely a carp. No bites through the night though. Well, again, very subtle show this morning, just stuck its head out, little line of bubbles. There's still 1 or 2 in the area, so, you know, good thing with the zigs, there's a chance for a bite anytime. Although zigs, they couldn't really get much simpler, you know, it's literally knotless knot, attaching a small piece of foam or pop up, or, you know, suspended, something that will keep that hook suspended up in the water layers. One thing bearing in mind though, you know, these waters, a lot of the time in the spring, winter time when we're fishing the zigs, absolutely crystal clear. You see on some lakes, you know, people dropping right down 8-10 pound uplinks, 10-12 hooks. These are big carp, you know, we're still trying to catch. And more importantly, land, you know. Some weedy conditions still, although it's folded over, you know, 1 or 2 times, you do still find them weed beds. So a lot of the time I'm using sort of like the 13 pound uplink and still a size 8 hook, you know, it's still, you're never going to snap that when you're fishing them sort of 5-6 foot long, you know, bit of pressure. And I've landed some big fish on them in some weedy conditions as well. But whenever sort of years ago, I used to just fish them size 8, 10 up, whip it down, you know, fishing them just a knotless knot, almost to a piece of foam on a hair. Small bit of silicone just to make sure everything was, you know, kept bang flush in line. A handful of times it's happened, you know, I had a bite, hooked a fish into one, lost it, and I've actually had it where the hook has sort of twisted round, like the hook bait, if you like, has twisted round the shank and actually been penetrated by the point of the hook. You know, just showing how much they're trying to get rid of that, the mouth movements. Nowadays, literally just use these little zig kickers now. Keep everything perfectly in line, you know, the bait's tight to the back of the shank, nothing can wrap round. Perfect little job, and as well, they're quite stiff as well. You know, the little bit there that's creating a curve, you know, just perfectly, just spin around, keeping the shape much better as well. So yeah, sort of combined with the £11 if there ain't too much weed about, but a lot of the time it's a £13 hook link. The little trick before about doubling the hook link up, you know, onto the knot there. Any weak point in the mono is going to be the knot. So doubling that up, you know, it just ensures them lighter hook links, it's never going to fail on you. So it's just sort of double checking everything, strong components, you know, that you're going to land a big carp on. Another joy of the little zig kickers, you know, massively versatile. Of array of colours, the little red and blacks, yellow and blacks, you know, browns, black on their own. You've got different sort of colour kickers as well, so you can really sort of mix and match things up. I mean, a real sort of personal favourite of mine is the red and the blacks, and as well, as soon as it goes night time, like I say, I find myself winding in and putting on the sort of solid blacks. Bigger sort of solid object out there for the, you know, you've got a lot of hours of darkness for in the winter and spring. So yeah, they sort of tick all the boxes, you know. Included in the range, little tool, if you like, almost like a little cone end, sort of separate the end, you know, you put the barrel in there, a little bit of, you know, saliva on there just to lubricate it up, literally onto the back of the barrel, sort of push them through. You know, I almost like to try and sit them on the sort of split of the divide of the colours, or, you know, centralise that barrel as much as possible. And then you can sort of play around with how much you want to pull that kicker down the shank. I say it's only a sort of a size 8 hook, you know. Personally, I like to just about cover the knot, almost sitting opposite the point. You still keep that nice shape then, you know, it's got quite an aggressive curve. You know, everything's to put its mouth around that. You need as much movement into that, you know, end of the day, we've got 5 or 6 foot of hook link to sort of, you know, to play around with. So yeah, if they're to approach that, the quicker that can spin, everything can tighten up. I mean, the hook holes I've had on these, you know, as you'd imagine, slap bang right in the bottom lip, you know, never falling off. So yeah, absolutely bomb proof. Sort of running up to the tail end of the zig there, you know, using quite long anti-tangle sleeves. Sort of the longest ones you can get away with really, or the longest ones I can get my hands on. And then a really sort of small diddy leg clip there, some sort of new ones. And with them as well, you know, you can set them so they ever so slightly just lip over. Don't hinder on the cast, you know, they've got a real sort of strong arm in there. Strong enough to sort of take, you know, a good lead. But with that, I know, fishing a relatively tight line to it, the second there's any sort of bounce on that, you know, the lead's gone straight. The worst thing you can have on a zig, you know, is a lead sort of attached on the end in any sort of weedy water. So yeah, ensuring that that's gone on the bite ideally. And yeah, far less to go wrong. I've used zigs for, Christ, getting over 15 years now. I remember sort of 2005, using them on a sort of really deep lake in Cheshire, Asbury. You know, back then, 15mm pop-up, you know, seeing them cruising around, just fishing a hook bait up in the water. But yeah, they've been in my armoury, especially around springtime, you know, fishing a lot of these, travelling for more of my fishing and fishing the clear sort of gravel pits. Much more's going on, you know, you're learning so much more in the sense of learning about hatches, keeping your eyes out for birds as much as fish. And yeah, massive part of my fishing, predominantly over the winter, early spring, you know, until clear signs of feeding are happening. You know, there's a definite window where the zigs, they'd be on every rod if they could be, you know. A lot of people associate zigs, you know, with fishing these bite waters, catching smaller carp. I've had some real big fish on zigs over the years. I mean, first sort of experience of catching big ones on them must have been, I suppose, Christchurch in Oxford. You know, it's over 10 years ago now that. And, you know, first real big one on them, I think it was a fish became to known as toe jam. You know, 39.5 pound common. The following spring, caught on the perch, you know, I think just under 44. And sort of fished a few other waters and around, you know, and it might be a season or two where you don't use one at all. But sort of in more recent years, fishing the Dinton waters, you know, again, the tap clear, rich gravel pits,
Lots going on the natural front hatches and so on in the spring. You know, they've been a big part of my fishing during the early part of the year. A couple of years back, you know, just after lockdown, I remember it was our first trip we were allowed back out, first week in April. Bit of a preconceived idea of where I wanted to be from previous knowledge of the pit. Hands down, got it completely wrong. You know, got up in the morning, convinced I was going to see them. They weren't, they were on the other side of the islands. Soon sort of sorted that out, you know, had a little walk up, could see them showing through there. Everything on the barra, scooted round, luckily dropped into a swim, literally minutes before another chap managed to. Sat and watched, you know, thought right, worked out the ranges, 3 zigs put out into that area. I think it's only an hour or so later, you know, I had a mega 46-pound 10-ounce common. You know, a real rare visitor to the bank as well. And onto the spring just gone, you know, it's almost a year to the week almost. I'd sort of fished over on black swan. I'd mixed it up the previous few winters, you know, doing a bit of pike fishing and so on. But decided last year to have a real sort of good go on black swan fishing all winter with them. And I think it was, well yeah, it was around this time, you know, early March. I'd had over sort of 30 bites. I'd fished it all the way through the winter. You know, I had some nice fish. A lot of sort of 20 pounds, I've not had anything massive, although I'd lost a couple of good ones. But yeah, this particular time, you know, sort of got it right. I remember I'd been quite ill actually, COVID and whatever. Well enough to go fishing anyway, so got myself out fishing. There was a couple on, I mean it was quite a concentrated area as you often find in the winter, you know. They'll be balled up in an area or a certain area or sort of old fish. And the particular features out in the bay area where I'd spent most of the winter fishing, you know, big sort of drop-offs, shelves, everything that they could ask for really. And if you almost imagine like a swimming pool sort of size area, must have done 90% of the bites. Accessible from probably 3 swims. And I'd sort of come down, you know, not much light left. Clearly sort of other people fishing the other swims, a swim called Big Dogs. You know, put you right in that sort of zone. And yeah, shut the brolly up just before dark. I'm just about to whip a rig out. And the matey boy on the other swim, you know, he sent him over like right at the limit of his water, if you like, and it's, you know, it's right in front of you. Although you're both clipping up to similar wraps, you know, 21, 22, 23, and you're leaving a rod length, if that, between you. You know, and with that, I'd sort of, you know, last thing you need, you know, 3.5 hour drive, just got everything up, soaked, you know, it's down at the time. Just sat on the brolly, just sorted the rods out, you know, watching out, last bit of light, next thing, bosh, lead, bosh, another lead, you know, you're a bit like, need it. And I was sort of, you know, a little bit off, I suppose, with it, you know, thinking, you know, I've done it all winter. And obviously it's spring now, more people are starting to turn up. Sees one come out to the left, you know, over the shallower water. Obviously buzz right up, you know, zigs right down, sort of 2 or 3 footers. And I put them all out into that area. Buzzing, you know, I'd heard a couple in the night, no bites. Got up the next morning, the wind had sort of turned, you know, creating a bit of a flat area in front of me. And as I sort of swim, it's not too elevated, but as you sort of get back a bit, you know, little swirls, little tail patterns, all of a sudden you'd make out a little back, you know, clear as day. There was little groups, 2s and 3s sort of coming through that 40, 35, 40, 50 yard band in front of me. You know, I had 3 zigs sort of all over and thinking, God, I've got to get a bite. Nothing. Matey boy had one out the deep water. Then another one in the other swim got caught out the deep water. You know, I'd not seen a fish show there. But clearly sort of over the shallow ground, you know, I had rods on them thinking, come on, I've got to get a bite. Nothing, you know, sort of it coming tonight. One of the mates cheesy, he'd popped down, we're having a brew and so on. Yeah, it's probably got 9 o'clock, he decided to get off. But just before he did, you know, we sort of sat there and I thought, them other lads had gone. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to clip them up and sort of put them on them usual zones on the shelf. Obviously pitch black, lengthened up the zigs, but I knew the depth to the clips to the depth rather, you know, you're dropping down a shelf. you know, 12 foot, going over rod length, you're in sort of 14s. So put the right depth zigs to the right sort of areas on the shelves, if you like, you know, 9 footers, 10 footer, 5 footer a bit further out and so on. Everything done in the dark, sort of out there, you know, big leads, tight lines, job done. It's, you know, head down sort of thing, in early hours of the morning, 1:30, 2 o'clock I suppose. Most of your bites on the zigs, you know, I'm not putting a tail rubber behind them, 6 ounce lead and sort of tightening up with the mono as much as I can to that almost create like a trigger effect. You know, the uplink's picked up, it's got to lift the weight of the lead obviously, a lot of pressure to sink the hook, and then it's almost, everything springs back towards them. So a lot of your bites are straight drop backs, almost like you've cut the line. But that one's sort of different, you know, I've woke up, did the rod's up off the rest, you know, tick, 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 quite tight spools, you know, on the clutch quite tight, and I remember picking him up, yeah, and like most of them big ones that I've been fortunate to catch over the years on Dinton, you know when you're attached to one, you know. Big battle, these sort of go on, you know, it's wipe the other rods out, you can see the other lines sort of picking up on them, opening the bail arms up behind you, and just sort of praying, you know, nothing, everything's sort of, you know, 13 pound uplink, size 8 hooks, big fish as well, you know, you're sort of praying. But yeah, eventually, a few massive explosions, you know, flat rodded near the net, and I'd left my head torch, you know, sort of just shot out to the bite. See it there, netted this mass, you know, sort of secured him up, back to the bivvy, straight away, head torch. And as soon as that torch hit him, you know, I just knew instantly, like 5 years of obsessively trying to catch this carp, and there he was, you know, looking massive as well. But yeah, I just couldn't believe me up, you know, absolutely nailed there, right at the bottom lip, see it clear as day, a little bit of black foam. Yeah, so sort of secured him all up, got the mat ready, you know, just sort of, okay, it's definitely him, a few phone calls. I mean, I weighed him quickly on my own, you know, I see him shoot straight around over 54 pounds, thinking, you know, Jesus monster. But yeah, in the sack, sort of all secured up, and you know, phone calls are made, and literally I just sat there. I don't even think I've put that rod back out, to be honest. I sort of sat as I am now, but the water would be there, you know, waders on, just sort of with it for hours. Tea, smoke, you know, just reliving that. I've got it, I can't believe I've got it. It's just such a unreal buzz. As sort of light came, you know, along with the other lads that have sort of come to witness it, film crew if you like, I think in all there was getting on for 15, 16 lads there. You know, we've got him on the bank there, just, you know, completely in awe, all of us I think, just incredible colours, just the size of the thing, you know, such a long carp. But yeah, you know, you think, if you can catch something that sort of size and scale on a zig, you know, a small little object fished up in the water, size 8 hook, you know, everything, it sort of blows your head, doesn't it? You think 55 pounder almost, size 4, 20 pound or 40 pound braid, you know, it's battle. I mean, don't get me wrong, it definitely was a battle, like, but yeah, you know, certainly tamed that beast. All right, boys. Fucking size of that. Buzzing.